Discovered. The heartwarming journey of a grandma who overcame trauma in just 30 days. Incredible. The chill of winter seeped through the small Midwestern town, but inside Grandma Ruth's kitchen, the warmth of memories clung to the air, thick, sweet, and unmistakably inviting, like her famous apple pies. But today at 72, surrounded by empty chairs and forgotten laughter, Ruth felt the freezing grip of loneliness deep in her bones. It had been over 10 years since her beloved Harold passed away, and the past few months had been especially hard after her fall. The scar on her leg was a constant reminder of both fragility and isolation. Looking out through the frost-laden window, she stared at the park where families gathered, children laughing and life danced. Memories washed over her like waves. She reminisced about the bake sales, the potlucks, the camaraderie that seemed lost as the town avoided her. Her son Daniel strayed further from her heart, her estranged child who had moved away, residing in a distant land, seeming to forget the warmth of home. With a heavy heart, she slid her fingers across the cool wood of the table, feeling the weight of guilt and resentment press down like a storm cloud hanging low. But today, something stirred inside her, an ember of hope flickering in the shadowy corners. She remembered another legend of family values that seemed buried by time. Ruth thought about the single mother down the street, struggling to make ends meet while raising a lively toddler alone. The child's laughter echoed her own, once vibrant and filled with joy. It ignited an urge, a fire to take action. "I can do something," she whispered to herself. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Ruth dove into organizing a fundraiser, clinging to the old traditions of community support that once thrived in their town. The whispers began the moment she stepped outside. Old friends, or perhaps former friends, lined up like faint ghosts, sharing sideways glances and doubts about her intentions. But she wouldn't let that stop her. She baked pie after pie, rich and golden, filling her home with an aroma of resilience and nostalgia as she reached out to neighbors. Just as the day of the fundraiser approached, Ruth dialed Daniel's number, her heart alight with anticipation. Each ring was a heartbeat, a hope. But when she heard his voice, the conversation spiraled into misunderstanding, old wounds ripping open, leaving her gasping for air. "Why can't you understand?" she pleaded before the line went dead. Tears streamed down her cheeks, despair clawing at her chest. But in her moment of vulnerability, amid letters from Harold on family and love, determination coursed through her. Glancing at the faded photograph of happier days brought clarity. She was not just a spectator in her own life. As the clock ticked toward the fundraiser, Ruth faced her self-doubts head-on but clung desperately to her dreams for community, love, and perhaps mending the ties with Daniel. Here she stood, pie in hand, as the townsfolk gathered, hearts heavy with expectations and judgment dancing in the air. Would she succeed in weaving the fabric of family and community together again, or would she crumble? She took a deep breath, the warmth of hope flickering anew. What awaited her just moments away could change everything. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden hues across the snow-covered park, Ruth felt her heart race. The folding tables were set under a canopy of twinkling lights, each bulb illuminating her determination to reconnect with a community she had longed to embrace. The sound of laughter echoed faintly in the distance, a reminder of the joy that seemed forever out of reach. Neighbors slowly trickled in, some holding plates piled with delicious dishes, while others carried warm smiles accompanied by skeptical glances. Ruth's palms were clammy as she arranged her pies. She could hear the whispers, the doubts, fluttering around her like the winter breeze. Why is she even trying? One voice murmured. It stung, but she steeled herself. This was more than a fundraiser. It was a bridge to healing. As the first hungry guests approached the table, Ruth's nervous energy transformed into excitement. "Come on in. I've made something special for you," she called out, her voice cracking with emotion. When a petite woman with a toddler on her hip stepped forward, Ruth felt a flutter of hope. "My son loves your pies, Mrs. Ruth," she gushed. The compliments filled her with warmth, melting away layers of self-doubt. As chatter filled the air, Ruth watched children scamper about, giggling and tumbling in the snow. Each laugh was like music, stirring something deep within her. For the first time in what felt like ages, she was part of something again. She paused to survey her surroundings. Familiar faces, some from years past, were now glancing her way with a mix of curiosity and longing. But amidst this blossoming camaraderie, her heart still ached for one connection: Daniel. He lingered in her thoughts, an ever-present shadow. What would it take to mend that fracture? Ruth resolved once more that this wasn't just about raising funds. It was about rebuilding connections, reflecting on every moment wasted, every word left unspoken. Time seemed to fly as people dug into her pies. The air hung heavy with sweetness, laughter, and the hum of rekindled relationships. Ruth found herself mingling, sharing stories and listening intently. Each interaction mended a small piece of her heart. When she spotted the single mother watching from a distance, she waved enthusiastically. "Come join us," she called, her eyes glistening with hope. The mother hesitated for a moment but then ventured forth, her toddler clutching a little bear. "Are you sure?" she asked, as if uncertain if she belonged. Ruth smiled reassuringly. "Of course. There's plenty of pie for all." With each passing moment, Ruth felt the chill of loneliness melting away. The fundraiser transformed into a reunion of sorts, a gathering of weary souls finding solace together. Yet, as the evening progressed, she knew deep down that something was still missing. She needed to reach Daniel. The idea tugged at her heart as the first snowflakes began to fall, soft and silent. Just as Ruth felt she could no longer bear the unfilled void, a figure emerged from the shadows. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Daniel, standing hesitant at the edge of the gathering, his expression unreadable. Her heart raced. Would this moment lead to a new beginning or another painful chapter? Deep inside, she felt that she was on the brink of a transformation that could reshape their fractured bond forever. With trembling hands and a hopeful heart, she stepped forward. "Daniel," she called softly, the weight of all unsaid words lingering in the air as everyone turned to witness the moment. What would he say? Would they find their way back to each other? Ruth's voice hung in the air, trembling yet strong. As she called his name, everything else faded. The laughter, the music, the familiar scents from the tables, all of it blurred into background noise. Daniel stood still, his dark coat contrasting sharply with the pristine white of the snow, as if the world had paused just for them. "Ruth," he finally replied, his voice low and hesitant. A shift in the atmosphere swept through the gathering. Neighbors exchanged glances, the nervous energy palpable as they stood witness to this ambitious attempt at healing. She stepped closer, heart pounding. The warmth she had felt moments before now mingled with a cold dread. "I didn't expect to see you here," she managed, her throat thick. "I thought maybe you'd want to stop by. To talk." He shifted his weight, looking down at the ground, his breath visible in the crisp air. "I heard about the fundraiser. I was curious." His words hung heavy, filled with layers of unsaid things. Ruth felt an ache deep in her chest, a reminder of all they'd lost and what they could still reclaim. "Curiosity isn't enough," Ruth said, her honesty pulling at her gut. "I've missed you, Daniel. All these years. It's time. We owe it to ourselves to at least try." People moved softly around them, giving the two space yet still listening. Ruth caught a glance from a few acquaintances, their expressions softening, assessing. She could feel the weight of their eyes, hopes wrapped in encouragement. Daniel let out a shaky breath, his eyes darting to the edge of the gathering. "It's complicated, our past isn't something that can be overlooked," he admitted, glancing up to meet her gaze. "Doesn't have to be. We can face it together," she urged, the heat of her desire for reconciliation reflecting in her fiery eyes. "Tonight is about rebuilding. I've never stopped believing that we could mend what was broken." The shadows danced across his face as he wrestled with his emotions. She could see it, a flicker of something behind those guarded eyes. Was it hope? Longing? The possibility of forgiveness? "Ruth," he started, and for a moment she feared the worst. "I've been lost for so long. It's hard to know where to even begin." Her heart raced again, the window widening just a crack. "We start with honesty, with small steps. Do you really think it can work?" he asked, barely above a whisper, vulnerability wrapping around his words. "Yes," she said firmly. "If we want it to." In that moment the surrounding chatter fell away, leaving an intimate space for them both. A small child's laugh echoed, a gentle reminder of innocence and hope, and Ruth was emboldened by it. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his hand. As the warmth of her touch met his cool skin, Daniel glanced down. The hesitation in his eyes softened, revealing a flicker of desire to reconnect the spark they once shared still lingering beneath the surface. Before they could delve deeper into this fragile moment, a burst of laughter erupted from a group nearby, pulling them both back into the shared reality of the gathering. Ruth's heart dropped slightly, knowing they would have to navigate the waters of their relationship in view of so many. But she held on to that spark. They both did. "Let us at least start with pie?" she suggested, attempting to lighten the heavy moment, a playful smile creeping onto her face. Daniel chuckled softly, breaking the tension a bit. "Sure, I can do pie." As they moved toward the bubbling conversations and delicious pies, Ruth felt a shift beneath the surface, an unspoken agreement. This was just the first step, but what lay ahead depended on them both. Could they rebuild what had once felt irrevocably broken? The answer lingered in the cool night air, thick with possibilities, leaving her breathless as two paths visibly merged once again. Ruth realized, above all, that they had a long road ahead. But with every shared laugh, every bite of pie, she felt like perhaps just this once, things might turn out differently. And as they reached the table, something inside her whispered, what if this was just the beginning of something beautiful? Ruth followed Daniel through the gathering, her heart lifting slightly as they approached the dessert table. The sweet scents of pie, warm apples and cinnamon, rich chocolate were almost intoxicating. It felt like a small victory, sharing this simple moment with him after a lifetime of pain. "Which one?" he asked, glancing over the spread, his face softening as he pointed at the array. "Definitely the apple," she replied, grinning. "It's my favorite." They leaned closer to the table, their shoulders brushing as Ruth grabbed a plate. Daniel reached for a slice too, his hand nearly resting on hers, and the contact sent a jolt of warmth through her. As they stepped back, plates in hand, Ruth dared to peek up at his face. His expression was contemplative, as if he was weighing each memory, each fragment of their past that they'd shared as they stood side by side. The weight of the past still loomed between them, yet now there was a flicker of hope that perhaps it could be transformed. "Do you remember our first date?" Daniel asked suddenly, pulling her from her thoughts. His smile was small yet genuine. "Of course," Ruth laughed, the sound light and freeing. "You were so nervous, your hands were shaking when you tried to hold mine. I thought you might drop my ice cream." He chuckled, a soft sound of nostalgia that made her heart swell. "I was terrified, but you just laughed and offered me some of yours." They moved to a quiet corner, standing under the fairy lights strung up among the trees. The buzzing energy of the gathering thrummed in the background, but for Ruth and Daniel, it felt like they were in their own little world. The others were just a blur behind them. Ruth took a breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs. "I'd like to create new memories, ones that don't have shadows attached to them. We can build something different, something better." Daniel's face turned serious. "Ruth, I want to pretend that it'll be easy. There are things I feel ashamed of, things we need to confront together," she emphasized, her voice steady. "You want to be alone." For a moment he just stared into her eyes, searching for something, maybe courage, maybe trust. And when he spoke again, his voice was low, a whisper wrapped in sincerity. "What if I mess it up again?" "Then we fix it," she said, wrapping her fingers around his, the warmth radiating between them. "One day at a time. Just like we did before." The sharp pang of apprehension dulled, replaced with an overwhelming sense of possibility. Maybe this was a chance to redefine their relationship, to rise from the ashes of their past mistakes. Ruth felt a rush of emotions as Daniel squeezed her hand gently, as if sealing a silent pact between them. "Okay," he said finally, a smile creeping onto his face that was both hesitant and hopeful. "Let us try. Pie first, then honesty, right?" She laughed softly. "Right. Starting with pie." The sound of laughter and music danced around them, wrapping them in a blanket of warmth and community. Every shared glance and every gentle touch felt like a promise, opening doors to forgotten possibilities. Just as they took a bite of their slices, a voice broke through their moment. "Hey Daniel, don't forget to get your donation in for the center." Ruth's heart sank a little. The charity they were gathering for had been a lifeline, But it also brought reminders of their devastating history. That center was the source of many happy memories, but also the place where they had lost so much. Daniel's expression shifted, understanding the weight of the announcement. Ruth knew they couldn't hide from the past forever. They needed to confront it head-on. "You okay?" she asked, concern flickering in her chest. "I don't know," he admitted, his gaze locked onto the group of people by the donation box. Each shared moment, every laugh felt intertwined with their history, and now they faced the reality of their choices. Could they truly leave the shadows behind? Or would the ghosts of their past pull them back in? As the gathering continued around them, Ruth felt an unexpected surge of determination. No matter what lay ahead, she knew there was strength in their connection. But deep down she couldn't shake the question. Was their shared past stronger than their desire to rebuild? The answer hovered in the air, heavy with uncertainty, as Daniel's gaze focused ahead, and Ruth felt the weight of the future pressing against her. The music swirled around them, a lively mix that contrasted starkly with the gravity hanging heavy in the air. Ruth watched as Daniel shifted his weight, clearly battling with the emotions that fought for dominance within him. His eyes never left the small assembly near the donation box, where volunteers collected funds for the center. "We can go over there if you want," she offered, her voice barely a whisper. She could feel the pulse of anxiety running through him. It mirrored her own. The memories attached to that place were complex, like a tapestry woven with bright and dark threads. For a moment he looked lost, his expression a blend of hesitations and fears. "Do you think we should? I mean, after everything," his voice trailed off, eyes narrowing as if closing themselves off from deeper thoughts. Ruth took a deep breath, thinking back to all the times they had faced their fears together. "If we're going to start fresh, we need to face it all. Together." He turned to her, vulnerability flashing in his gaze. "You really think we can?" "Yes," she nodded, her heart pounding in rhythm with the hope igniting within her. Taking a deep breath, Ruth stepped closer to him. She could feel his warmth beside her, a grounding force, a silent promise that came with shared history. "Let us just go over one step at a time." With each tentative stride they took toward the donation box, the sounds of laughter and chatter faded into a muted backdrop. They entered a small circle of memory, one that was rich and bittersweet. The donation sign was bright, but the memories, the laughter, the tears, the pain cast shadows no amount of charitable giving could erase. As they arrived, Ruth felt a mix of apprehension and resolve. A couple of familiar faces greeted them, but she didn't focus on anyone else. Her focus remained solely on Daniel. "Hey Daniel. Good to see you." A cheerful voice broke through, the smile on the face of a woman they both recognized. "Hey," Daniel replied, but his voice was strained. Ruth could sense the tension tightening around him. "Have you thought about how much you're donating?" The woman continued, unaware of the internal storm brewing inside Daniel. He glanced at Ruth, his eyes searching for reassurance. And in that moment, surrounded by familiar faces yet feeling so alone, Ruth realized the stakes were higher than she'd anticipated. It wasn't just about donations, it was about facing their intertwined past. We're not sure yet," Daniel finally said, his tone lacking the assurance intended. "Then how about this?" Ruth spoke up, surprising even herself. "Let us make a pledge. A commitment to give but also to face what brought us here. To honor the memories but also to reshape them." Daniel looked at her, an emotion she couldn't quite decipher flickering across his face. Uncertainty, but there was something else, a spark of recognition, of understanding. "Yeah," he finally said, his voice finding strength. "Let us honor our past while building a future." Her heart swelled as they locked eyes, sharing unspoken agreement. Maybe just that small shift in perspective could be the light they needed to navigate through the darkness. As they began to write their donation amount, the weight of enemies turned to allies was palpable. Little by little, they were rediscovering each other, not just in the context of their past but as partners ready to face the future. But as they finished their pledge, Ruth couldn't shake a lingering worry that wrapped around her like a tendril. They were moving forward, yes, but what would happen when the past caught up? When they had to confront the real challenges ahead? "Hey guys. Let us make this month a game changer for all of us. We have a team meeting next week for major decisions," someone called from the group. Ruth felt her pulse race anew. The meetings, the discussions, it all seemed so daunting now. The road ahead riddled with complexities she hadn't anticipated. Could they really rebuild amidst the fragmented memories and people they once were? As she looked up at Daniel, she found him gazing back at her, his expression mirroring her own uncertainty. Today was just a step, but the journey ahead felt far more daunting than she'd expected. And the most pressing question hung heavy between them. Could they truly transform everything they lost into something beautiful? Ruth felt a sudden gust of emotion as she tightened her grip around the pen. The weight of their pledge didn't just lie in the numbers they wrote. It felt monumental, like signing off on a new chapter. Daniel's fingers brushed against hers, and though fleeting, it ignited a flicker of hope that perhaps they could transform their pain into purpose. "Hey, you two," the cheerful woman interrupted her thoughts. "You should come to the team meeting next week. We could use fresh ideas, especially with that new initiative we're launching." Ruth forced a smile, but the thought of sitting in a room filled with memories, watching as others navigated the spaces she and Daniel barely felt comfortable in, made her stomach churn. "Yeah, we'll see," she managed, her voice trailing off, anxiety knotting in her chest. Daniel's expression was unreadable. The excitement of their small victory began to fade as the reality of past traumas loomed larger in the echo of the gathering around them. Ruth wondered if he felt the same way, a constant balancing act between hope and fear. As the chatter continued, she could see Daniel's mind drifting, his gaze retreating into memories that brought more questions than answers. "What did we really agree to, Ruth?" he eventually murmured, his voice low, barely above the ambient noise of laughter and music. There was desperation in his tone, and it twisted her heart. "I don't know," she confessed, keeping her eyes on him, afraid that seeking his gaze might drown her in a tide of uncertainty. "But we can't keep running. We have to confront, well, everything." He exhaled slowly, pressing his lips into a thin line. Ruth realized she needed to do more than just offer support. She needed to light a path through the shadows in his mind. "We can think of this as a blank canvas. We're not just diving back into everything that went wrong, Daniel. We're deciding what our future can look like." Daniel finally met her gaze, and despite the apprehension swirling between them, a flicker of defiance sparked to life. "But what if I can't face it?" he asked, vulnerability laid bare. Ruth's chest tightened. "Then we figure it out together. I don't want either of us to feel alone. That's what got us here in the first place." Her voice rang with honesty, the words seeping into her heart as much as it pierced his doubt. "Okay," he whispered, his conviction nascent but unmistakable. Together. As the day wore on, they joined familiar faces, laughing and sharing stories. Yet Ruth could feel the delicate tether between her promise and their reality pulling taut. Each chuckle had a shadow lurking behind it, each cheerful smile tinged with reminders of the hurt. When they eventually stepped outside, the evening sky was painted in shades of indigo and gold. The transition felt symbolic. It was a change, a sign of a new beginning. Yet deep down she knew it wouldn't be easy. The past is often a stubborn companion, haunting every hopeful step forward. Ruth turned to Daniel, desire for connection tugging at her. "Would you want to go for coffee? Just the two of us? I think we need to talk more." About her words hung in the air, the weight of unspoken truths catching in her throat. Suddenly, he hesitated and looked away, a deep shadow crossing his face. "I just need to think. I'm not ready to dive into everything yet." That twist in her stomach returned, a cold clench that threatened to undo the warmth they had almost built. "Okay," she replied, struggling to mask the disappointment. "Just promise me you won't shut down. I know it can get overwhelming, but keeping it all inside won't help." "I promise," he said quietly, but Ruth could sense the wall he was raising as they walked to their cars. A shared silence hung heavy between them. Each step felt like they were walking away from their hope instead of toward it. What was supposed to be a moment of relief felt instead like the calm before a storm. Later that night, Ruth replayed their conversation in her mind, wrestling with how to pierce through the barrier. Could they really face what came next? Or would they crumble under the weight of their history? The answer wasn't clear, but their shared resolve flashed in her thoughts like a beacon. They had reached for the lighter side of grief today. But the true test lay ahead, facing the roots of their pain. What awaited them on the other side of the past would ultimately determine the beauty or destruction of their shared future. As doubt crept in, Ruth's phone buzzed, Daniel's name flickering across the screen. A text that might unlock everything or shatter what they had rebuilt. The thrill of anticipation rushed through her veins. Would it be the lifeline she'd hoped for? Or would it bring more weight to their already heavy journey? Ruth's heart raced as she stared at her phone, the screen brightly illuminating her thoughts. She hesitated, fingers trembling over the display. What could he possibly want to say now? She took a deep breath and opened the message. Hey, can we talk? Just 3 words. But they carried a weight that felt like both a lifeline and a chain. Hope flickered in her chest, but the fear of what that conversation could bring was palpable. Would he want to dive deep into their struggles? Or was this just another way of pulling away? Deciding to respond, she typed back quickly. Yes. When and where? The reply came almost instantly. Can we meet at the park? I think I need some fresh air. Ruth's pulse quickened. The park. Their special place. It was where they had shared laughter, heartbreak, and dreams under the sprawling branches of the old oak tree by the pond. She remembered the warmth of the sun on their faces, the peaceful hum of nature surrounding them. It felt like the perfect setting to bridge the gap that had widened between them. Without hesitating, she typed, sure. Be there in 15. As she drove, her mind swirled with possibilities. What would Daniel share? Would he finally let her in? Each passing street light felt like a countdown, intensifying the anticipation. The setting sun cast long shadows, reminiscent of the uncertainties still lurking in their hearts. When she arrived at the park, the air felt charged with possibilities. The golden rays filtered through the trees, creating patches of warmth on the cool grass. Ruth spotted Daniel sitting on their usual bench, his posture tense, hands clasped together. He looked lost in thought, and her heart ached at the sight. Hey, she said softly, taking a seat beside him. He glanced up, forcing a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Thanks for coming. Of course, she replied, trying to inject warmth into her tone. What's on your mind? Daniel sighed, a deep sigh filled with the weight of untold stories. I've been thinking about everything, how we've been tiptoeing around it all. I don't want to be stuck anymore. Ruth's heart leaped at his honesty. Neither do I, she said quickly. We can't expect things to change overnight, but I believe we can find a way forward. He looked away, his eyebrows knitting together. I don't know if I have it in me to face some of the things we've buried. Ruth placed her hand on his arm. You won't be alone, Daniel. We've faced bad days before. This time can be different. His gaze shifted to her, uncertainty wrestling with emotion. Like, what if we start with the small stuff? The things that still mess with my head? Absolutely. The relief relaxed her shoulders. Small steps can lead to big changes. He nodded slowly, the anxiety easing just a fraction. I think I can handle that. Just promise me we'll tackle the really heavy things later when I'm ready. Promise, she assured him, her heart swelling with compassion. They talked for hours, each word slowly chipping away at the barriers built around their hearts. Daniel shared moments of confusion, pain, and flashes of beauty that still lingered like ghosts. With each story, Ruth found pieces of herself reflected in his fears. The shadows began to feel less daunting as they illuminated shared experiences. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and purple, something had shifted between them. It was subtle, but the air felt lighter, charged with a sense of shared possibility. As they rose to leave, Daniel hesitated, glancing back at the bench where they'd spilled secrets. Thank you for being here tonight, Ruth. I feel. He paused, searching for the right words, maybe a little less lost? Ruth smiled brightly. And just think, we've only just started. I'm proud of you. However, the moment of relief was interrupted as she received another text, just as they approached their cars. The screen brightened again, revealing an unexpected name, someone from their past, suggesting an upheaval they never saw coming. Who is it? Daniel asked, a shadow of dread crossing his features. Ruth's heart raced again, the calm of their evening suddenly punctured by uncertainty. It's someone I didn't expect to hear from. What did they want? Why now? As questions swirled, so did the tension, leaving them both teetering on the edge of another challenge. Ruth felt a chill settle in her bones as she stared at the text. The name pulled her back to a time she thought she'd left behind, a ripple of old fears washing over her. Memories flickered like ghosts in her mind, moments that were once joyful but felt heavy now. It's my old therapist, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. She wants to reconnect, says she has something important to discuss. Daniel raised an eyebrow, the concern etched on his face deepening. Do you think it's about your mom? He asked gently. Just the mention of it sent a shiver down her spine. The past loomed over them like a dark cloud, suffocating every breath she took. Maybe, she whispered, fear pooling in her throat. I haven't heard from her in years. I thought we were done with all of that. Does it feel like something you want to deal with? He probed, brows knitted together. His gaze held a mix of worry and sincerity. Ruth bit her lip, the tension in the air tightening around them. I don't know. Part of me thinks it's just opening old wounds. Daniel reached out, his hand brushing against hers, grounding her. But what if it's the key to moving forward? You've been putting so much energy into us lately. But maybe it's time to face what's blocking you. The thought struck her like a lightning bolt, igniting a spark of courage mixed with anxiety. Could unraveling the past truly help them? I guess if I'm going to open up completely, I can't keep avoiding everything, she said slowly, the reality dawning on her. Just remember, whatever happens, I'll be here, he said, squeezing her hand. His warmth eased some of the curling tension in her chest. Do you want to reply now or think about it? Taking a deep breath, Ruth typed a simple response. What's this about? After hitting send, she felt a rush of anxiety wash over her. How could one text feel so massive? In that moment, the air felt heavy again. She looked at Daniel, the worry etched on his face reminding her of how deeply they'd connected that night. They had started to peel back layers together, revealing their raw truths. She didn't want their progress disrupted by her unanswered questions. Let us not let this get between us right now, Daniel said, reading her expression. We were doing so well. Yeah, she agreed, tightening her grip on his hand. This is our time. We just started to illuminate the good things that could come from tackling our shadows. They stood there for a moment, hand in hand, absorbing the night. The deep blues of twilight wrapped around them, a comforting embrace. But then, Ruth's phone buzzed again, this time sending electricity straight through her. It's a response, she said, peering down at the screen, her heartbeat racing. What does it say? She hesitated, fingers hovering over the words, the weight of uncertainty pressing against her ribs. I'm not sure I want to know. Daniel leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. You'll never find out if you don't look. And I'm right here. Taking a deep breath, she opened the message, her mind swirling with God knows what awaited her. Ruth, I have something important to tell you about your mother. It's time you knew the truth. Hope crashed into fear like waves against the shore, leaving her staring into the storm. What truth? What had she unknowingly been blind to? As the shadows deepened around them, Ruth could only wonder what awaited on the other side of this revelation. Could it bind them together or tear them apart forever? Are you ready for whatever this is? Daniel asked quietly, concern etched into the lines of his forehead, with her heart pounding and uncertainty swirling like a tempest inside her. Ruth nodded, more to reassure herself than him. I guess we'll find out together. With the truth now looming, tension hung thick in the air, and Ruth couldn't shake the feeling that the real journey was just beginning. Would the past come back to haunt them, or would it finally set her free? Ruth took a shaky breath, her heart racing as she read the message again. It's time you knew the truth. Those words echoed in her mind, heavy and ominous. She felt as if she stood at the edge of a precipice, teetering between fear and curiosity. Daniel's thumb brushed against her knuckles, a soft gesture that anchored her in the moment. You don't have to rush into anything, he said, his voice calm, yet it carried an urgency that matched her racing pulse. We can take a minute. She nodded but felt a push from within. This wasn't just about her. It was about understanding the past that shaped her, and it was high time to confront it. No, I think I need to see what this is about, she replied, her determination growing stronger. With Daniel's eyes on her, she opened the message once more, her breath hitching in her throat. Ruth, the last time your mother trusted me with her truth, she was at a crossroads. You were just a child, but what I have to share might shed light on everything, including what haunts you both now. Sitting in the balmy night air, Ruth felt a clash of hope and fear. What could her mother possibly have gone through? What were the secrets long buried in that shadowed past? What if it's worse than I imagined? She whispered, half to Daniel and half to herself. But what if it's the answer you've been searching for? He countered softly, tilting his head. bringing their eyes level. Face it now and hopefully you can put it behind you. Ruth's heart beat hard against her ribs. You make it sound so easy, her voice trailed off, but beneath the doubt, a flicker of hope ignited. She took a moment, swallowing hard, the anticipation buzzing in her ears. "Okay," she said finally. "I'm going to call her." "Are you sure?" Daniel asked gently, the concern etched across his face, a comforting reminder that she wasn't alone. "Yeah," Ruth decided, her resolve crystallizing. "I need to do this." She dialed the number, her fingers trembling against the screen. Each ring felt like an eternity. Daniel stayed quiet beside her, a steady presence that bolstered her courage. When the call connected, Ruth's heart leaped into her throat. "It's me," she said, her voice catching. "You wanted to talk?" Ruth, her therapist's voice came through, steady but with an undertone of emotion. "I'm glad you picked up." Ruth felt a wave of vulnerability crash over her. "Why now? What's this about?" A pause followed, heavy and loaded. "It's about your mother, Ruth. There are things you don't know. Things that could change how you see her and yourself." She glanced at Daniel, the weight of those words hanging between them. He nodded slightly, encouraging her to keep listening. "What if I don't want to know?" Ruth steeled herself, but there was a part of her that knew this was too important. "Then you may continue to carry the weight of uncertainty," her therapist replied softly. "But I believe you're stronger than that. You can face this." As Ruth absorbed the weight of those sentences, she felt a strange calm begin to wash over her, mingling eerily with her anxiety. "Tell me," she urged, her voice trembling with renewed resolve. "I want to hear the truth." Daniel squeezed her hand tight, giving her the strength she needed. "You've got this, Ruth. I'm right here," he whispered, his presence fortifying her resolve. With a deep breath, she prepared herself for the layers of revelation, the pain, the confusion, the potential for healing. She leaned forward, ready to embrace whatever came next. But before the therapist could respond, the line crackled ominously. "Ruth, there's something you need to understand." The words hung in the air, suffocating yet tantalizing. Ruth's heart raced. What revelation awaited her now? What darkness lay in the corners of her past? The tremor of anxiety that passed through her was palpable, and she couldn't help but wonder. Would this be the key to freedom, or would it forever change everything she thought she knew? Ruth sat stiffly on her park bench, the phone tight in her grip. The night air was still and charged, as if the universe held its breath alongside her. Daniel's caring presence settled beside her, a silent promise that she wouldn't have to face whatever lay ahead alone. "Ruth, there's something you need to understand," the therapist's voice echoed in her mind. "Tell me," she breathed, a vulnerability unfurling as she prepared for what could unravel in the next few moments. "Your mother," she struggled with her own demons. She kept parts of her life hidden, parts of herself that affected you greatly. But she loved you deeply, more than you realized. Ruth's heart danced between longing and despair, anger and understanding. She felt a weight settling in her chest. "What do you mean? What did she hide?" "Your mother fought battles that no child should have to witness. Her past was filled with shadows, mental illness, and pain that inevitably seeped into your home life. She didn't want you to carry those burdens, but in her silence, they inadvertently became yours." Tears pooled in Ruth's eyes. Her childhood memory was tainted with moments she couldn't fully grasp, whispers of conflict that shrouded their household in uncertainty. Daniel's hand tightened around hers, warmth spreading through her. She glanced over, and in that moment felt some of the weight lifting as their connection fortified the resolve to face these layers. "We can do this together," he whispered, eyes reflecting a gentle understanding. As she focused on her therapist's voice again, she felt a protective instinct emerge for both herself and her mother. "But why didn't she tell me? Why hide it?" "Ruth, some truths are hard to bear. She wanted you to live without the burden of her past mistakes, the choices she made, the pain she endured. But sometimes when the weight of the past is too much, it comes crashing down unexpectedly." A shiver coursed through her. The fabric of everything she knew felt ready to unravel. But she was ready to understand, to forgive. "Is my mother all right?" she found herself asking, desperately clinging to a thread of hope that had flickered to life. "She's been on a long journey of recovery," the therapist shared. "But she wishes to reconnect, to heal the broken bonds." Ruth's breath caught. Could her mother be finding a way back? How? Is it too late for us? It's never too late. Healing is a slow, wretchedly beautiful road. If you're open to the conversation, it might just ignite a path toward reconciliation. I'm willing to try, Ruth finally said, feeling the lump in her throat. If she's ready, I will be too. Daniel's hand pressed comfortingly on her back, and together they faced the throbbing wounds of the past, ready to embrace what it means to be family again. A softened sense of determination replaced the previous storm inside her. Do you think, can things really change? She pondered, eyes wide, encompassing every emotion that bubbled beneath the surface. Change is possible only when you confront it, the therapist's voice persisted, assuring her gently. You've already taken steps. Keep moving forward. Ruth nodded, allowing the words to seep into her heart. In that moment, she felt a rush of gratitude for Daniel's unwavering support, grounding her as she realized neither of them would walk this path alone, no matter how treacherous it felt. I want to let fear steer my decisions. I want to learn to grow and most importantly to heal, she declared. Daniel's eyes brightened, warmth radiating from him. I believe in you, Ruth. Whatever comes next, just remember. You have a support system now, you're never alone. As Ruth mulled over the therapist's words and Daniel's steadfast presence, they walked back to their cars together, leaving behind the weight of uncertainty that had once lingered. The night sky stretched endlessly above, the stars shining bright, a million hopes waiting to be realized. In that moment, Ruth felt a fire igniting within, a promise of new beginnings rising from the ashes of the past. I'm ready to write our story anew, she whispered, feeling the thrill of anticipation swirl through her thoughts. With every step she took, strong, deliberate, and purposeful, revealed a truth as profound as the night around them. The journey of healing begins with confronting the truth, and love has the power to break every chain. As they drove away from the park, Ruth noticed that every turn felt like setting forth into a brighter future. Hope lingered in the air, ready to envelop them both in its embrace. Now it's time to take action. You need to subscribe now to this channel, so you don't miss out on our next exclusive stories that can change lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this journey alive. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this heartwarming ending. And please share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Show your support and impact someone else's life today.